Sit back. No, further back. Into the shadows where the firelight doesn't quite reach. You'll want the darkness to be your friend by the time I finish this, though I suspect, after tonight, none of you will ever truly trust a quiet room again. You see this hand? The way the skin is pulled tight over the knuckles, translucent as parchment, and stained with a gray that no soap can scrub away. That isn't age. That is the stain of the black moor. And the finger, you see the gap. The missing digit on my left hand. I didn't lose it to a blade or a trap. I cut it off myself. I had to. It was the only way to stop the whispering. Listen closely, for this is the story of the Whispering Barrow, and why I, Silas the Fool, Silas the Greediest, should have never, ever touched the ring of the Silent King. It began on a Tuesday, a day of gray rain and heavy hearts. I was a man of small means and large debts. In the village of Oakhaven, I was the one you went to when you needed a hole dug, a cellar, a well, or a grave. I was good with a spade, but I was better at listening to the stories of the old men who sat by the hearth. They spoke of the high moors, a place where the grass grows in shades of bruised purple and the wind sounds like a choir of the damned. At the center of those moors lies the barrow, a mound of earth and ancient stone that predates the first kings of this land. They called it the Whispering Barrow. They said it wasn't a tomb, but a prison. And inside that prison, buried with a monarch whose name has been erased from every scroll, was a ring. The star-glass ring, old Harlan had whispered, his eyes milky with cataracts. Forged from the heart of a fallen star. It doesn't just hold wealth, Silas. It holds time. It holds the secrets of the earth. But the earth doesn't like sharing its secrets. I was young then, and I thought, secrets, meant, gold. I thought, prison, meant, defenseless. I took my spade, a crowbar, and a heavy cloak, and I walked into the mist. The high moors don't want you there. The ground is spongy, a mixture of peat and ancient rot that tries to suck the boots right off your feet. As I climbed higher, the air grew thin and tasted of ozone. The birds stopped singing. Even the insects were silent. Then, I heard it for the first time. It wasn't a voice. Not at first. It was the sound of 1,000 dry leaves skittering across a stone floor. It came from the ground beneath me. I stopped, my heart thumping against my ribs. The sound stopped. I took a step. I reached the barrow at twilight. It was a massive, humpbacked thing, covered in gray lichen that looked like the hair of an old woman. A single standing stone marked the entrance, a slab of black basalt etched with runes that seemed to squirm if you looked at them directly. Just one ring, I muttered to myself. One ring to pay the debt, and I'm gone. The entrance was partially collapsed, a narrow slit between two stones. I squeezed through, the cold of the rock biting through my tunic. Inside, the air was different. It was heavy. It didn't feel like air, it felt like liquid. It smelled of wet copper and very, very old dust. My lantern cast long, dancing shadows against the walls. The walls weren't just stone, they were lined with the bones of the commoners who had been sacrificed to follow their king into the dark. Thousands of them. Ribs, femurs, and skulls, all arranged in intricate, geometric patterns. And the whispering, here, it was louder. It was a rhythmic chanting, a low vibration that I felt in my teeth. In the center of the main chamber sat a throne carved from a single block of white marble. And upon that throne sat the king. He wasn't a skeleton. Not exactly. His skin had turned to leather, stretched tight over a frame that was far too tall to be human. He wore a crown of iron thorns, and his hands were folded over his lap. On the fourth finger of his left hand sat the ring. It wasn't gold. It was a dark, translucent material that seemed to swallow the light of my lantern. It looked like a piece of the night sky had been bent into a circle. Inside the stone, things were moving. Tiny, silver sparks drifted like dust motes in a sunbeam. I should have turned back. Every instinct, every drop of blood in my body, was screaming at me to run until my lungs burst. But the whispering changed. It became a chorus of promises. It spoke of silver rivers, of towers that touched the stars, of a life where I would never have to dig another grave. I reached out. My hand trembled. The moment my skin touched the king's leathery finger, the air in the room vanished. The ring slid off with sickening ease. It was heavy, heavier than lead. And it was warm. It pulsed against my palm like a tiny, frantic heart. The king didn't move. He didn't grab my wrist. He didn't rise from his throne. But as I backed away, clutching the ring, I saw his jaw drop open. Not to scream, just to exhale. A single puff of gray dust escaped his lips, and the whispering, it stopped. The silence that followed was worse than any sound I've ever heard. It was the silence of the void. I made it back to Oakhaven by dawn. I hid the ring in a lead box I'd stolen from the church, and I buried that box under my floorboards. I told myself I'd wait a month before trying to sell it. Let the heat die down. Let the Moors forget me. But the Moors don't forget. The first night, I woke up because I thought there was a swarm of bees in my room. I lit a candle. Nothing. I went back to sleep, and the sound returned, louder this time. It was coming from under the floor. The second night, the whispers started using words. Not words I knew, but words I understood. They spoke of the deep places. They spoke of the weight of the mountain. They spoke of the hunger of the earth. Give it back, little digger, they sighed. The circle must be closed. The king is awake, and he has no eyes to see the stars. He needs your eyes, Silas. He needs your breath. I tried to throw the ring into the river. I walked to the bridge, the lead box heavy in my pocket. I took the ring out. It was even more beautiful in the daylight. The silver sparks inside were dancing wildly. I went to fling it into the churning water, but my arm wouldn't move. It was as if my muscles had turned to stone. I stood there for 3 hours, my arm cocked back, unable to release the ring. People passed by, asking if I was all right. I couldn't even speak. My jaw was locked tight. Only when I put the ring back into my pocket did my body belong to me again. That was when I noticed the change in my hand. The finger that had worn the ring, even for those few seconds in the barrow, was turning gray. The nail became black and brittle. The skin began to smell of peat and ancient dust. And the whispering was no longer coming from the floor or the walls. It was coming from inside my own marrow. I couldn't eat. Every time I put food to my mouth, it tasted like dirt. I couldn't drink, the water tasted like stagnant pond slough. I was wasting away, but I wasn't getting weaker. I was getting harder. My skin felt like it was becoming leather. My thoughts were no longer my own. I began to remember things I had never seen. The building of the Great Pyramids, the smell of fires burned 10,000 years ago, the feeling of a crown of thorns upon my brow. The king wasn't coming for the ring. The king was using the ring to come for me. He was moving into my house. He was moving into my skin. One night, I looked in the mirror and I didn't see Silas the gravedigger. I saw a hollow-cheeked specter with bioluminescent sparks in his eyes. Behind me, in the reflection, I saw the barrow. It was sitting in the middle of my small hut, the stone walls of my home replaced by the bone-lined walls of the tomb. The king was sitting on my bed. He was leaning forward, his empty socket staring into mine. He held out his hand, his left hand. It was missing the ring. The price of the secret, the king whispered. His voice wasn't a sound, it was a physical weight that pushed me to my knees. As the soul of the keeper. You took the time, Silas. Now, you give me yours. I knew then what I had to do. I couldn't throw the ring away. I couldn't sell it. As long as it was near me, the bridge was open. And as long as it was on my person, I was the host. I stumbled to my workbench. I grabbed the heavy cleaver I used for chopping kindling. I laid my left hand flat against the wood. The ring was on my fourth finger. I had put it on in a trance without even realizing it. The ring had grown smaller, tighter, biting into my gray, dead flesh. The whispers reached a fever pitch. They were screaming now, a cacophony of ancient languages, a storm of sound that made blood leak from my ears. No. The circle. The king requires the circle. I didn't think. If I had thought for even a second, I would have failed. I brought the cleaver down with every ounce of strength I had left. Pain. No. It wasn't pain. It was like a thunderclap inside my brain. A flash of white light blinded me. I felt a surge of coldness, a freezing wind that swept through the room, knocking over the candles and shattering the windows. When the light faded, I was lying on the floor, gasping for air. The room was cold, but the heavy, liquid feeling was gone. The smell of rot had vanished. My left hand was a ruin of blood and bone. My fourth finger was gone. And the ring was gone, too. There was no sign of it on the floor. No sign of the finger. It was as if the earth itself had reached up and snatched them both back the moment they were severed from my living body. I survived. Obviously. I cauterized the wound with the fire from the hearth, and I fled Oakhaven that very night. I've spent the last 20 years moving from town to town, never staying in one place for more than a month. But listen to me. Listen to the way the wind is hitting the shutters of this tavern. The ring is back in the barrow. The king is back on his throne. But he is not the same as he was. He has a piece of me now. He has my finger, my blood, and a portion of my soul. And sometimes, when the moon is thin and the air is still, I feel it. I feel my missing finger twitching. I feel the cold marble of the throne beneath my ghostly hand. I hear the whispers, not as a scream anymore, but as a gentle invitation. Come back, Silas, they say. There is a vacancy in the tomb. There is a space beside the king. You started the journey. You must finish the circle. I tell you this because you are young, and you have that look in your eyes, the look of a man who thinks the world is full of treasures waiting to be claimed. You think there are places where the old laws don't apply. You think you can take a little piece of the dark and bring it into the light without changing the light itself. You are wrong. Some things are buried for a reason. Not to keep them safe, but to keep us safe. The Whispering Barrow is still there, out on the high moors. The grass is still purple, and the wind still sings. And the ring is waiting for a hand that is whole. Keep your spades for the garden, friends. Keep your lanterns for the road. If you ever find yourself on a path where the birds stop singing, and the ground starts to hiss beneath your feet, turn around. Don't look back. Don't listen to the promises of silver rivers and star towers. Because the earth has a very long memory. And it never, ever gives back what it has claimed. Now, look at the fire. See how it's burning low. See how the shadows are stretching out from the corners of the room. I think it's time I moved on. I can feel my finger twitching again. The mist is rolling in from the moors, and I'd rather be 20 miles away before the whispering starts tonight. Good night to you all, and may your sleep be silent.